So the topic of the panel discussion is what skills are needed for innovation. It's going to be chaired by, or moderated by the CEO of Telenor Health, of the Telenor Group, and somebody who I've always looked up to being very, very innovative, Mr. Sajid Rahman. The panelists joining him are Syed Almas Kabir, CEO of MetroNet Bangladesh, Mr. M.A. Mubin Khan, and Managing Director of EATL, Mr. Raghu, CEO of DTECHex of Cambridge, UK, Mr. Yasir Azman, Deputy CEO and Chief Marketing Officer of Grameenphone Limited, and Kristin, co-founder of Brainiac Plus at Brinc Plus, did I get that wrong? Brinc Plus at Brinc.io, the founder and of Design Thinking Asia. So ladies and gentlemen, can we just welcome the panel?
It works now. Okay. I think before we go to the panel discussion, I think you will have to leave very quickly, right? So you want to just say a few things and then...
Thank you. Please. Thank you very much, Sajid bhai. This is a very interesting session. Innovation is the most important issue nowadays because, whole world is searching for innovation. And one innovative idea can change the society, change the country, change the world. The WhatsApp is a great example, which sold out $19 billion. Our Bangladesh Bank reserve is now $30 billion. And one innovative application sold out $19 billion. Then we understand what is the importance of innovation. I want to share some experience which we are doing with young people, private and public universities. We are running a contest in the country last 4 years. And our ultimate goal is innovation and searching the brightest talent. And this contest is a very popular contest in the country. We say national largest contest in mobile application. This year, World Bank and Canada is our lead sponsor. And last year, Grameenphone was our lead sponsor. Thank you, Azman bhai. Azman bhai is here. And this contest, what we are doing, this is very interesting. The idea we are bringing to young people, idea generation to application generation, application development. In different stages, we are helping them to develop their skills, and we are grooming them and engage, mentor. And also, successful innovation in organization needs combination of skills, cultures, structures, processes, and dynamic leadership. And innovative leadership, which is great example, I think, Singapore. And one idea which I mentioned earlier, one idea can change the society, change the country. Very interesting thing, 2 weeks back, one top-level Japanese delegations came in Bangladesh. They are second largest telecom company in Japan. And they asked me, what is the strength of Bangladesh? Then I tell them, the Bangladesh big strength is our young people. Because total nations, 2/3 is our young people. And our young people, last few years of our experience, they have the innovation, they have the creativity. If we can develop their skill, they can change the society, They can change the country. They can change the image of the country in the world. The last of all, I will say, today's this session topics is very, very important. What skills are needed for innovation? I think the idea generation, apply innovation technique, modeling, prototype, and other things, problem solving, which is very much needed for innovation. And thank you very much, Sajid bhai, and thank you all. I'm leaving, I apologize. My mother is very sick, and that's why I'm leaving. I will pray for my mother. His age is 85. That's why I'm leaving. I'm very, very apologize. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's start with you, Raghu. We talked about innovations, and the whole topic was how to get the skill sets, right? So from your experience, how is it different between countries? I mean, why do we hear some countries to be more innovative? It seems from the perception, we get areas like Silicon Valley, which seems like the hub of innovations, and others are not. So what is the difference?
Great question. I think funding is one aspect to that. A lot of at least hardware technologies that we're involved in do need, in some cases, extended funding. But I think the major one is really entrepreneurship. If we look at, say, Silicon Valley versus the UK is usually quite well funded, but we don't have Googles or Facebook in the UK. Usually in the UK, when you meet even the best entrepreneurs, their aim is to get a $50 million company, then sell it. No one is thinking creating a $1 billion company or a $10 billion company. And for whatever reason, in the US, you have a lot more of that. So I think having, people who are really determined to go for something and also have big ambitions, start small but move quickly, but really aim to get to really big businesses, that seems to be one of the ways that, say, the US is ahead of the others in terms of innovation.
And Azman, by going to you, if we are thinking that the innovation that seems to be very much focused in certain areas, let's say in Silicon Valley and others, from a corporate perspective, can we replicate? I mean, can Grameenphone or Telenor Group, can it replicate that level of training and funding to develop the innovation within a company?
I think it's very much possible. I think that's the start point. When you talk about nurturing an idea and taking it through the processes and bringing it live to the customers and winning millions and billions of customers, I think that's the start point where people, probably the big corporates or people like here, needs to get into that sort of a stage that we shall go through a disruption. It's like we are living in an internet century where all these big corporates we see today, the way we are running our businesses, and I think this will be heavily challenged. No matter what, in a small or medium or big corporates, it is inevitable. And then, if the big corporates are not accepting that philosophically and in their management style, I think we would not able to sustain. And that is how we see that corporates shall able to do what you are asking for. And we are seeing that there are many big corporations probably failing. It's like we all talk about this common thing about Nokia when he mentioned that I didn't know what, I have not done anything wrong, but still I had to take the exit. On the other hand, there are many companies, even in Bangladesh, probably Grameenphone is an example, that every day innovating. It started its journey with that innovation of Polyphone, and today we are talking about how do you digitalize our customer life. I think this is unavoidable, and it's very much possible the corporates, if they understand that in the internet century, without changing yourself, without nurturing innovation, you can't sustain in your business. Even incremental is not possible in coming days.
Yeah. Kristin, going to you. So a lot of corporates, what Azman bhai was saying or Raghu was saying, so a lot of corporates understand that innovation is required to survive, and a lot of companies have done it successfully. But at the same time, a lot of companies fail to do that. Why? I mean, what goes wrong?
That's a very good question. Just for context for everyone as well. So I come from a design thinking background and also I'm a partner at an IoT accelerator. Primarily I work with startups, sometimes I work with corporates, generally in the context of making them a little bit more startup-y. So to your question there, I think why it doesn't go well for some companies is that they've misdiagnosed the problem. And to a degree, I almost want to rephrase the question that we've got here as well, because I'm not so sure that it's a question of treating this as a skills and a training problem. I think when it comes to innovation, we're really talking about a mindset and a process problem. Fundamentally, it's about culture, and that almost makes it a design problem more than it does a talent problem or an engineering problem. So I think if organisations that kind of view their people as an asset and view the interactions that they have between each other as an asset, they will treat it as a cultural problem and they'll start designing for that from the outset rather than trying to kind of inoculate their workforce with a particular technique or a particular framework. That's kind of the difference I've seen between people who approach it as a program of training versus building a genuine capability like muscle memory.
And Almas, coming to you, wearing your hat as an entrepreneur and a founder of a company and also working closely with governments, do you think we can bring the same level of innovation in a government setup when we're talking about government ministries and how to bring that? You know, so where I'm coming from is if we look at Singapore government or if we look at some of the government, they put innovation as very much at the center and they have a very clear policy and processes, including funding, to help innovation as well as partnership with universities, right? So how can we do that, or where are we in that aspect from a regulatory perspective?
Government has to be innovative or support innovation. There's no doubt about it, and you have just cited the example of Singapore doing that. Our government is the Prime Minister's office, the A2I program, they have an innovation cell. They are inviting innovative ideas from entrepreneurs and startups, and they are trying to support them. But the problem remains is the funding that many people have said, and earlier also, that the government can, organize a hackathon or a contest or some kind of an event and popularize those innovative ideas. But those ideas will need the funding from private entrepreneurs or private companies, rather, or VCs. And that is where we are, lagging behind Bangladesh. Another thing is that within the government ministries, the government other agencies, they need to be more innovative in their processes. So there is a need of process innovation within the government, and for that, I believe the government, the bureaucrats, they need to be very open to the ideas. They need to be open to the change, which is a very, very important skill that we have been talking about. What skills are needed for innovation? That you should be able to embrace new ideas. You should be able to accept the change. So I guess that is also needed within the government agencies to encourage innovation.
But do you see okay, so if I ask you on a scale of 1 to 10 and say where we are, assuming 10 is the best, where do you think we are in terms of the journey?
You mean
from a government?
From the government perspective only?
Yeah.
I would say in recent times we have fared quite well. You have seen that many of our the e-governance projects, they have taken off. Agriculture, a farmer like sending taking the picture of a crop, of a particular leaf, and then sending to the agriculture department, getting advice according to that. So these things are innovative ideas, and these things are happening. So in recent times, there is a trend of accepting new innovations. I would say in a scale of 1 to 10, we are somewhere around maybe 5, 6 still, and we have a lot more to do actually.
Okay, thanks. Raghu, going back to you, the point you are making that the funding clearly is one you're mentioning as which drives innovation, and then I guess it's sort of a virtuous cycle where you have founders who get funding, who do well, then they'll go back and they mentor and stuff like that. Picking up from what Almas was saying, that if we are somewhere around 5 and 6 in a landscape, where do you think we should put more focus as a country to really drive innovation?
I think it's quite simple. Focus on the application. There's so many good technologies out there, and some of those take a lot of money to get to the point where they are. But I generally feel that there's usually not a very good job done taking that to market and making it commercially successful. So, just earlier on, we heard a company who have taken voice recognition, and they're now applying that to help people in remote areas who can't read or write to use that for accounting and books. They've taken a technology which is out there, it's been around for some time, they've applied it in a very useful way. And while, of course, that does need some level of funding, they're not creating voice recognition necessarily from scratch. So I think there's a lot of technologies that exist that don't have to be reinvented. And the key is just taking those and applying them to be useful to someone. And I think that's a challenge, because there you need a really good understanding of what the problem is. You need people who are in those different verticals. But if you can identify the problem and how you can add value, I think you can use the huge basis of what's emerging through, not reinvent it, but do good and also create a business without perhaps a huge funding that's required from creating that core technology from scratch.
But do you see a model emerging for emerging markets? So will it be a different model for markets like us? Not a very top-down, but something which would be like small entrepreneurs making small teams, building the business.
So we are seeing, I think, companies do more in the mobile space. I mean, as was mentioned earlier, a lot of people in different emerging sort of territories have mobile phones and leveraging that, not necessarily smartphones, but communications via voice and text. So I think there's a lot of opportunities looking in that area, but I think it's still fairly fluid and early days in the whole process.
Okay. Azman bhai, the point of, clearly Grameenphone is the largest corporate and is playing its role through, I'm also part of the group, so disclaimer here. But what can Grameenphone do more to really help this innovation mapping in the country? So that's one. And second is, do you see, my view is that it's mostly, whatever innovation that we're seeing or whatever attempt we're seeing is mostly in the telco sector. And there are a few like Microsoft and other who are purely telco. But we don't see the same thing happening on FMCG and other sectors. And you also have that background. So what's your view on that?
I think what else Grameenphone could do before we start that one, we actually from inside out perspective, we started with some platforms. I think these are common practices like accelerator, whiteboard, internally Spark. Those are there, but as an industry leader, as a technology company, I think Grameenphone still have a big role to play in the governance level in the country. It's like to bring in the right facilitators, right enablers for our young entrepreneurs. I think these, like, let's say direct operator billing, let's say why not Google is here, how these big giants will come into the country, and our young developers will be able to monetize out of their developments. We were thinking about, like, Grameenphone is having so much of assets already built up for the telcos, like SMS API, like location APIs, like billing APIs. But we can't basically share this, because when we are talking about sharing with the new developers, they actually cannot monetize. They cannot basically monetize through our mobile balance. There are basically restrictions. So I think Grameenphone has a role to play, taking the financial institutions, other industry players, stakeholders, to make government understand these are the areas where basically government need to facilitate thinking about the new developers and entrepreneurs. And then industry relations topics are basically how do you basically make the technology neutral, how fast you can bring in 4G. I think high-speed internet extremely important if you would like to in the global scale. And then, of course, as I mentioned, you were asking for that, why don't we see the other industries? I think that is what probably there is a realization needs to come from the top management. And is to see that the threats are coming, and in the internet century, even we are sitting here, I don't think probably this sort of setup will continue for long. It's like there is a virtual world already there. You know, we are connected there. We are more like easy and comfortable in that virtual world to interact with people, even with the youngsters and the educationists and the perfectionists in that world. I think that realization, if not coming from the FMCG, especially the financial sector, I'm really looking forward that the leaders from the financial sectors coming up to innovate and bring in fintech into the country. That's basically, in my sense, it's a realization that this physical world and the traditional way of doing business will be heavily threatened, and we will be in question into our existence if we are not sponsoring from the top. I think that's the main thing. Yeah.
I'll add to that. I actually little bit disagree that the innovations are not happening in other industries, actually. Long time before, I guess a decade ago, that we have seen halal shaban, okay, in the FMCG industry, and that was a fantastic innovation, I would say. That had created a storm within the FMCG industry. And we have seen other innovations, like Pran has done innovation, Square has done some innovation with their products, like, you know, packaged amshotto and other things. But what the problem is in our industries, in Bangladeshi industries, that lack of R&D facilities. And if we do not have enough, if the corporations, the companies, if they do not invest in the R&D, then innovation won't happen. And another thing is very, very important. We have been discussing it the other day, that even if a company makes an R&D department and spends on the R&D department, that particular department should be independently run from the main management, because otherwise that R&D department won't be able to introduce change or, you know, be disruptive. So that is also very important, which is, I think, in Bangladesh's perspective, we still do not have that much.
Kristin, this, this design thing, so, it's a big challenge. The whole idea of user experience, user design. I mean, a lot of products are developed without that keeping in mind, and one of the reasons is probably we don't have a skill set on that in the corporate world. Now, the discussion we're having is how can we bring this skill set quicker to a larger pool? And the typical education system obviously is not up for that. So what is the route? I mean, we saw that, the presentation where, Professor Young, he was talking about from university to directly to accelerator, then, like saying is talking about, R&Ds and stuff. So what is the route?
I think there's a couple of ways to look at it, and there'll be more that evolve as well. I'd say for one side of things, really nailing the role and the relationship that large organisations play, be they government, NGO or private industry, that's really important. The way that I've found that's most useful to kind of use that or to configure that is to think of it in terms of cultivating intrapreneurship. So as much as entrepreneurship is cool and good and useful, it's also devastatingly difficult and hard. It's also valuable, but not everyone can do it and not everyone should want to have to do it. There's still a lot of things that you can do inside a large organisation by really trying to understand how an entrepreneur would look at a problem and apply that internally. And if you give people the space, the process, the systems, the tools to be able to do that, then you'll actually find, I think, that there's far less of a talent problem than everyone realises. I think that's one part of it. I think another part of it is maybe cultivating this concept of like design entrepreneurship a little bit more as well. I find that design is a really fantastic tool for helping people create new businesses in the first place. Just to the comment on the R&D stuff there as well, I really liked the comment that you made there. I think there's a slight sort of gap around R&D as well when we look at the way we look at it from like a national level or a company level, and the challenge is that we only research and develop what we know we should be researching and developing. And so there's a little bit of a blind spot there that I think design can help us fill, where we can actually identify what are the opportunities we need to be chasing that are non-obvious right now. And they're the things that can maybe help us actually identify relevance between different trends or different points or different industries that aren't immediately obvious at the moment.